this meeting. Now, the UN Human Rights Office in Geneva has also weighed in. What are the UN's key concerns when it comes to protecting rights and human rights? Yes, sir. Okay. All right. Okay. And when we skip, is AutoQ going to skip too? Janina.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 3.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese Foreign Minister in Burkina Faso for his Africa tour. Democratic Republic of Congo election results delayed amid UN concern. And patients who visited Burundi tested in Sweden as possible Ebola case. All right, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Searle in Nairobi alongside Rama Young with your business news.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up a little later in the hour. Former Credit Suisse bankers arrested in London for fraud involving state-owned companies in Mozambique. And Liberia's power utilities losing $35 million a year due to illegal connections. We'll have the details on those stories. Lots more coming up in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thank you, Rama. Well, China has expressed its readiness to continue supporting African states in all sectors. This is in the wake of a meeting on Friday morning between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and the African Union chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. Now, both sides have also agreed to see through the implementation of the outcomes of the FOCAC Beijing Forum.
It is for the second time that you are visiting the African Union headquarters in a few months, and this shows, if need be, the solid ground on which our relations are built. After the success of the FOCAC summit in Beijing, your visit comes at the most appropriate time in order to concretize the 8 initiatives launched by the President of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. I just want to express satisfaction the place that China reserves for Africa and the African Union. For China, African countries are very good partners, our brothers, and through concrete action, we want to support African countries in their efforts in order to build their capacities for development. We hope that Africa will really become independent, economic independence, and as much as possible, we make the necessary efforts in order to build the capacities of African Union, hoping that the African Union will continue to be able to play its role in the development of the African continent.
During his visit to Ethiopia, the Chinese foreign minister also addressed the issue of African countries borrowing to finance various development projects and how China offers a viable assistance to Africa.
China's position when it comes to the issue of debt with African states. Is there any tricky agreement as it's been claimed?
You see, the temporary debt difficulties facing some African countries did not come up today or yesterday. They were built up throughout history, and actually, so far, the main data from so many African countries is still from the developed countries. And the second point I want to make is that the cooperation between China and African countries is a friendly cooperation of mutual assistance. It's a type of South-South cooperation, and we follow the principles of mutual assistance in having cooperation with African countries. And in helping Ethiopia and other African countries' projects at the request of our African brothers and sisters, and we only start those projects after we have conducted feasibility studies and scientific assessments and evaluations. So our cooperation is open and transparent. And certainly how to help those African countries overcome these temporary financing difficulties. I think the answer is very clear. That is, we need to help them build up their own development capacity so as to make sure that they can generate economic growth from within their countries. At last year's FOCAC Beijing summit, China announced 8 major initiatives to help Africa to do so, and I believe that through their efforts, many of the African countries, including those that are currently facing debt difficulties, will achieve new and greater development success.
All right, so Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has departed from Ethiopia and is now in Burkina Faso. Wang landed in the capital Ouagadougou Friday evening. While in the West African country, Wang will meet with his Burkinabe counterpart. China and Burkina Faso agreed to re-establish relations in May last year. China supports Burkina Faso's efforts to fight terrorism and maintain stability in the country. During last year's forum on China-Africa cooperation, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Burkina Faso counterpart Roch Marc Christian Kabore witnessed the signing of various cooperation agreements between their nations. All right, for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Penina Karibe in Ouagadougou. Penina, can you give us more details on Wang Yi's visit to Burkina Faso?
Well, Richard, I can tell you a lot of expectation from here in Ouagadougou. This is a very significant and historic visit, the very first by Wang Yi here in Ouagadougou. And of course, the very first after China and Burkina Faso re-established diplomatic ties. Now, Ouagadougou, or Burkina Faso, I should say, is one of the poorest countries in the world. There is a lot of expectation pegged on this visit. That's because, Richard, China's cooperation with Burkina Faso is pegged on mutual trade and development for both of these countries. And there's a feeling on the ground as we interact with a lot of people here in Ouagadougou that they're waiting to see just what this visit will translate into in terms of personal benefits for a lot of people. Now, this is, like I mentioned, very significant because, as you mentioned, various areas of interest, especially for Ouagadougou, chief among them security. You talked about terrorism. I can tell you presently there is a state of emergency in the north. This is expected to be one of those key priority areas that China and Burkina Faso will focus on. But we spoke earlier on to the Chinese ambassador to Burkina Faso. We asked him about the priority areas that the two countries will focus on, and this is what he had to say.
We are very honored and very proud of our presence here as the first ambassador and our first team here to just take a lot of, I think, not only the field of medical, but in a lot of fields like infrastructure and education and culture, and I think many fields we have a lot of things to do together.
So the Chinese ambassador, of course, talking about health. I singled that out, Richard, because this is an area that already there is tangible results to be seen on the ground. Medical equipments were distributed or donated by the Chinese government today. And we have a team of Chinese doctors already here in Ouagadougou, the very first in the country. So this is one of the areas that at least the Burkinabés can say they can see something tangible on the ground, Richard.
All right, Penina, thank you for that update and report. That's Penina Karibe in Ouagadougou reporting. Moving on, the benefits of the newly established ties between China and Burkina Faso are already bearing fruit. A team of Chinese doctors has been offering specialist treatment in Ouagadougou, helping many locals access crucial and quality health care. CGTN's Penina Karibe reports.
The Tingandogo University Hospital in Ouagadougou is the country's biggest. It is here that patients from other hospitals across the country are referred for specialized medical treatment. The hospital has slightly under 600 staff and is currently hosting a special group of doctors from China. The group is made up of 10 members, among them a surgeon, urologist, orthopedist, cardiologist and respiratory specialist. They are the first group of Chinese doctors in this country and had to overcome various challenges such as language barrier to effectively carry out their work.
As the first group here, we had several tasks. First, we need to communicate with the health ministry and local hospitals to establish proper channels of communication. Secondly, we donated some important medical equipments to local hospitals so that our surgeons can be able to perform some complex surgeries. Also, we go out of the capital to the villages to treat the locals. Thirdly, we help to promote other special programs such as the Brightness Project that treats cataract. We collaborate with other specialists from China for some special programs, including Brightness Project, to be a success.
Chinese doctors have left their mark on several countries in the continent, but this is the first time Burkina Faso is receiving specialized doctors from China, and their impact on the country's health sector is already being felt.
What the Chinese are doing is very important. The health sector in Burkina Faso is not very developed. There are some fields where we do not have doctors. There are some fields where we have doctors but not many. So as a result, we need foreign doctors. Having these Chinese doctors helps us bridge that deficit that we have in some fields.
The doctors have brought along with them not only expertise, but also equipments that ensure patients get the assistance they need. After 6 months, however, this team is preparing to leave and is now handing over the mission to another new group, also from Beijing.
My advice to them is to make sure they quickly overcome the language barrier. They need to learn French quickly so as to be able to communicate with the patients effectively. Secondly, strengthen communication with local doctors and nurses so that they are better able to help the patients.
The doctors are also making long-term plans to ensure patients here continue receiving quality medical care.
So there's a continued program and project that we will continue send the doctors such as me in cardiology specialties to help them progressively improve the primary screening, primary prevention and secondary treatment for the heart disease such as hypertension, coronary heart disease, and in the next 2 or 3 years we'll build a center for the interventional treatment. So the patient in Burkina Faso will not need to go to the other countries to treat these diseases.
Penina Karibe, CGTN in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
All right, let's cross down to Muda Youssef. He is the Director General of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Lagos. Thank you for joining us, Muda. First and foremost, let me begin by asking, Burkina Faso only recently resumed diplomatic ties with China, and since then we have seen increased ties between the two countries. What does this new chapter in diplomatic ties mean?
Well, I think it is good for Burkina Faso, and it's also good for West Africa because the improvement in the ties between China and Burkina Faso and between China and West African countries is good for building the capacity of the West African economies. Because many of the economies are very weak in the area of infrastructure particularly, and that has been affecting.
Are we having a slight technical problem there? Hopefully we will get back to Musa before the end of the show. Moving on, though, to our next story. The head of the AU Commission, Musa Faki Mohammed, has called for the results of the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential vote to be respected. He made this plea in a tweet. Election observers from DR Congo's Catholic Church have said they know who has won the vote and urged the Electoral Commission to publish the truth. The Congolese Election Commission has said it is working hard to get provisional results ready for Sunday. Well, the Electoral Commission in the Democratic Republic of Congo says that the results expected on Sunday may be delayed. The process has been cited as generally calm but tense ahead of the announcement.
Sishekedi Shilombo 123 votes, Ramazani Shadari 30 votes.
The head of the Electoral Commission says counting centers were still awaiting for more than 80% of the vote tallies to be submitted by the local polling stations. This, he says, may cause a delay in the announcement of the result.
We don't know how long it will take to compile the results, but there's a lot of work to do. Even if they say they will give results on Sunday, we don't think it will be possible because we only started today. And until now, in the Mount Amba district, where we have 904 polling stations, we still haven't got through to 100. So we don't know what day we will finish.
The government shut down the internet, saying it feared the publication of results on social media from varying polling stations would create chaos. Senior spokesperson Jean-Pierre Kalamba said the organization refused to publish trends in case they were misinterpreted by the public.
The situation remains calm but very tense ahead of the announcement of the results of the elections. There are preliminary reports of some pockets of violence and, people being injured.
The United Nations, however, remains concerned about the situation in the country.
Intimidation and harassment against journalists, opposition candidates and human rights defenders continues to take place. And this being a very sensitive, as I said, very tense period, we are concerned that these efforts to silence dissent could backfire considerably when the results are announced. And we are watching carefully, and we are calling on all sides to refrain from the use of violence.
The opposition has also complained of irregularities in the election to find a successor to President Joseph Kabila, who is stepping down after 17 years in office. This may count as DR Congo's first orderly transfer of power since it gained independence in 1960. Noel Makugo, CGTN.
Well, now the United Nations Security Council has scheduled a meeting behind closed doors in connection with last Sunday's elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It will be the first meeting of the UN powerhouse for South Africa in its third term as a rotating member of the 15-nation body. For more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Liling Tan in New York. Liling, thank you for joining us. Liling, do we know the issues likely to be discussed in this meeting?
Yes, the messy, if you will, the messy post-election situation on the ground in the DRC appears to be causing nervousness here at the United Nations in New York. And the 15-member council will be meeting behind closed doors in a few hours to talk about the election, but also the delay in releasing the results, as well as determine if and how it should respond. Now, of primary concern, of course, is the risk that these ongoing tensions could escalate and result in the kind of deadly clashes and protests that we have seen in the past. Now, as it stands, we've had the situation remains calm, but tension has been brewing, and a spate of contradictory positions from different government agencies and religious bodies hasn't helped matters very much. We know, of course, the DRC's Electoral Commission had said that the results may be delayed. You just talked about this, may be delayed past Sunday. Their contention is that the information coming from polling station isn't coming in fast enough. But the powerful Catholic Church in the country has contradicted this, saying that it knows who won the elections. The National Episcopal Conference of Congo is calling on the government or the Electoral Commission to release those results. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the direction this could go, and the UN Security Council is effectively meeting behind closed doors so they can candidly discuss what to do, how to do it, and also kind of prepare the way for a bigger open public meeting that's scheduled for Tuesday for the Security Council to discuss the DRC issue.
All right. Well, the UN Human Rights Office in Geneva has also weighed in. What are the UN's key concerns when it comes to protecting the rights of the civilians?
Well, the UN's key concern, of course, as we have heard, is about the potential for clashes. We've heard earlier from the UN spokesperson, Ravina Shamdasani. She has said that although there have been reports that the situation is calm despite tensions, there have also been media reports of pockets of violence as well as people being injured. Now, she warned the DRC government that efforts to silence dissent could potentially backfire. Now, her comments come amid reports that journalists and opposition candidates are being harassed and intimidated, that the internet has been cut and media broadcasters have been blocked. So the United Nations Office of Human Rights, while it has a presence there, hasn't really been involved in the election process, but they do have observers on the ground, and these monitoring mechanisms, these observers are worried about the potential for the tension to escalate and blow over and effectively deprive the people of the DRC a peaceful political transition.
All right, Liling, thank you for that update and report. That's Liling Tang reporting from New York. All right, time now for a short break. When we return, the latest on the doctors' strike in Zimbabwe, Pei Rao continues. Delegates converge in Accra for the 10th Ghana International Model United Nations Conference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
All right, returning to our earlier story, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has departed from Ethiopia and is now in Burkina Faso. Wang landed in the capital Ouagadougou Friday evening. While in the West African country, Wang will meet with his Burkinabe counterpart. China and Burkina Faso agreed to re-establish relations in May last year. China supports Burkina Faso's efforts to fight terrorism and maintain stability in the country. Let's cross now back again to Muda Yusuf. He is the Director General of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Lagos. Muda, well, welcome back. The Foreign Minister is visiting 3 West African countries during this visit. What is the significance, and how can these countries and the region maximize on this?
Well, I believe it is a very good opportunity for the region and for the countries that have been visited. Many of the countries in the West African sub-region have major challenges, first with infrastructure, and increasingly they're also having challenges with security. So I imagine that the kind of partnership that is building up between China and these countries will help to strengthen the capacity of these countries to deal with the issue of infrastructure. Many of them have competitiveness issues, they have productivity issues, and most of these challenges are tied to the challenge of huge infrastructure deficits. that many of them have. And the relationship between China and these countries have brought a lot of value, a lot of benefit to these countries in terms of increasing the stock of their infrastructure, and ultimately this will help to strengthen their competitiveness. So I believe that is something that is very beneficial, that will be very beneficial to these countries. And in the area of security, many of the countries have security challenges, which have been affecting a lot of their economic activities. Some of the countries have challenges of terrorism, which has been affecting a whole lot of things in these countries. So the cooperation between China and these countries could also go a long way to help in dealing with the security challenges in this country. So both on the issue of security and the issue of infrastructure, I think these countries have a whole lot to benefit from the cooperation between the countries and China.
All right, Muda Yusuf, thank you for that update and report. That is the Director General of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Lagos. Moving on, a man is being treated in isolation in Sweden on suspicion of being infected with the Ebola after visiting Burundi. The chief medical officer at Sweden's Uppsala University Hospital says the young man had been in Burundi for around 3 weeks and was exhibiting classic symptoms of hemorrhagic fever, including vomiting blood. Now, the test results are expected later on Friday. There is no known Ebola outbreak in Burundi, but it borders the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been fighting an outbreak for almost 6 months. The disease has killed 356 of the 585 people known to have been infected. Well, Zimbabwe's government is on the verge of breaking an impasse with striking junior doctors following a meeting between the First Lady and the leaders of hospitals. Now, doctors' associations ended in a willingness to put the patient first. Before the meeting, the government had invited applications for internship from candidates who've completed 5 years in medical school to mitigate a medical emergency.
Casualty wards where the infirm are meant to find relief are turning them away as the doctors' strike enters its 5th week. Patients are being referred to private facilities, while those who don't have the means are left stranded.
We were told that they can't help us here because there aren't any doctors. When I heard that, I didn't know what to do or where to go next. That's why I had to sit down here and try to gather my thoughts.
Juliet has accompanied her 63-year-old mother on the 267-kilometer journey from Mutare. The hospital there couldn't attend to the septic tumor growing on her leg and referred her here, where she's enduring more distress. The leg is very painful, she says. She hasn't been prescribed any medication for the pain. Her plight is unlikely to improve as doctors stay away from the wards. Government says it's met 8 of their 10 demands, including provision of adequate drugs and equipment and facilitating a duty-free vehicle import scheme. However, the main outstanding issue, a demand for payment of salaries in US dollars, is out of the government's reach. The impasse has ground operations at some facilities to a halt. This is one of the country's largest public referral hospitals where other professionals, including consultants and senior doctors, radiographers and hospital registrars, are said to have also downed their tools in solidarity with their junior counterparts. While sympathizing with their cause, desperate patients want the doctors to compromise.
There's nothing I can do to heal this wound or ease my mother's pain. It's literally rotting while I am looking on. It will end up needing amputation given how far the decay has gone.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa has cut short his annual leave to deal with the crisis. His intervention will hopefully bring the quick resolution that could save this leg and many lives that are in danger. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Turning to recent developments in Somalia, Nicholas Haysom has addressed the United Nations Security Council days after being expelled from Somalia. He says the arrest of a former al-Shabaab deputy leader marred the country's electoral processes. The Somali diplomat Abukar Osman asked the international community to refrain from interfering in the country's internal affairs.
Nicholas Haysom says Somalia has maintained a positive trajectory, but warned that continuing political turbulence could throw it off course.
Politics is complex in any nation, but in one that is still establishing its norms, institutional parameters, and still debating the responsibilities of its respective governance structures, there is a risk that complexity shifts to conflict. We witnessed this during the electoral process in Southwest State.
He said the political landscape in the country is complicated by electoral processes that are currently underway in several federal member states.
Allegations of interference by the federal government and the violence which erupted following the arrest of one of the candidates, a former al-Shabaab deputy leader, marred the process and does not bode well for the upcoming electoral processes in other regions or for the 2020 national elections.
The Somali ambassador Abukar Osman appealed to the international community to respect the country's right to self-determination.
Somalia distinguishes between the institutions that we are part of and individual conduct that has a detrimental effect on our fragile nations. Our government is taking Somalia to a new future. It's no more of transitional nature, but a sovereign nation with all its rights and privileges. We are battling against terrorism, clan mentalities, and corruptions. It's our expectation that the leadership of the UN will support that strategic picture and do not interfere in our internal affairs and let the Somalis control their own destiny.
The UN diplomat wrote the Somali government a letter asking it to explain the legal basis for arresting Mukhtar Robow. Robow is a former al-Shabaab deputy leader who was the main challenger in the Southwest state elections for regional presidency. Haysom was later asked to leave the country for interfering with its sovereignty. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Hundreds of young people from the African continent are meeting in Accra for the 10th Ghana International Model United Nations Conference. The event aims to encourage the next generation of leaders to get involved in global issues. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Modeling Ewuku is leading a plenary session on women's empowerment at this Model UN conference in the Ghanaian capital. Since it was established in 2007, the conference has set out to equip young people with diplomatic skills.
That's actually helped boost my confidence because most of the time you have ideas you want to put across, but you don't have the right avenue to bring them out. So during the Model UN conference, we discuss pertinent issues which is disturbing in the various countries and the various nations at large.
The conference is a simulation of specialized bodies of the United Nations. At this plenary session, delegates are discussing the Sustainable Development Goal on gender inequality.
My position as being the president for UN Women, other women who thought it's an intimidating position right now are encouraged to go for it.
Delegates also learn more about how the global body handles global affairs. The Ghana International Model United Nations Conference is a platform where the youth drawn from the African continent hone their skills in leadership. Participants say with the knowledge gained at the conference, they are more determined to contribute to the development of their respective countries. Organizers of the conference say it's an opportunity to prepare young people for diplomacy.
These are the platforms where young people, are they students or workers, come together to brainstorm, to think on issues that they are facing in their countries, their communities, and find ways and means to solve those issues. And at the end of everything, we come up with a resolution that is sent to the United Nations to tell them what the young people that we stand for.
With the experience gained from UN model conferences, modeling now works for the United Nations Development Program in Ghana, and she hopes to build a long career with the UN as a result. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
All right, let's now go to Rama Yang for the latest business news.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. Former bankers with Credit Suisse have been arrested in London for fraud involving state companies in Mozambique. And Liberia's power utilities losing $35 million a year due to illegal connections. All that and more is in the pipeline.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Right, then let's start in the world of credit. 3 former Credit Suisse bankers were arrested in London on the 3rd of January on charges levied against them in the United States. Now, the 3 are accused of taking part in a fraud scheme involving about $2 billion in loans to state-owned companies in Mozambique. The 3 have been identified as 49-year-old Andrew Pierce, 44-year-old Sujan Singh, 37-year-old Detalina Subeva. Now, they were arrested 5 days after the former Mozambican Finance Minister Manuel Chang was also arrested in South Africa as part of the exact same indictment. Prosecutors say at least $200 million was diverted to the defendant and other Mozambican government officials. They also say the defendants concealed the misuse of funds and misled investors abroad, including in the US, about Mozambique's credit worthiness. Now, the companies missed more than $700 million worth of loan payments after defaulting in 2016 and 2017. Officials in the Liberia Electricity Corporation say over 60% of the country's electricity supply is stolen every year through illegal connections. Now, that theft is costing the utility more than $35 million a year. CGTN's Alexander Majala explains.
For most people living in Liberia's capital, the sight of a technician climbing up an electricity pole in Monrovia is not a welcome sight these days. The Liberia Electricity Corporation says that about 60% of its annual output is being stolen. The state-owned utility has launched a widespread crackdown on homes and businesses that are illegally connected to its grid. LEC says about $35 million is being drained from its coffers every year and that it needs to tap every cent to rebuild the country's power sector and boost supply.
We're in discussions with the and we're hoping to get some traction on those discussions with a view to moving the theft of electricity from not a misdemeanor but to felony, and perhaps classifying it as economic sabotage, because effectively that's what's happening.
Founded by freed American slaves, Liberia is Africa's oldest modern republic. The country's infrastructure and public services were destroyed during civil war between 1989 and 2003. Efforts at post-war recovery have been short-circuited by falling prices of Liberia's main exports, iron ore and rubber. An Ebola outbreak from 2014 to 2016 only served to make things worse. But many of Monrovia's residents are charged up. They say the LEC should focus on quickly resolving problems in its supply chain rather than being in such a hurry to cut their cords.
I can't sleep in darkness. The reason why people are doing this thing, because LEC, they're now trying to strategize. You understand? They need to come up with strategies where the Liberian people will get covered easily. You get the money, you understand, to pay to follow the procedure. But anytime you go there, they say there's no meter, there's no meter, there's no meter. I got 2 restaurants are running here. Before I even got that meter, it was not easy. You understand? The reason why I bypassed that same thing, I just moved in this community.
Some citizens like Helen Pocolo, another Monrovia-based entrepreneur, urges a more inclusive approach in which communities could help the LEC stop people from stealing power.
I don't have electricity. I have to rely on my generator, but then I can't afford to have all my things on it. I'm appealing to the LEC to come to our rescue. We go to their office all the time. If they will just supply us, we could then stop people from tampering with the line. But because there is no solution to give us electricity, that's why people keep doing illegal things on the line.
It is estimated that only 12% of Liberia's 4.7 million people can plug into the country's current capacity of 126 megawatts. Liberia's overall demand for electricity is expected to climb to about 300 megawatts by the year 2030. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
On to North Africa now, where Tunisia's state-owned carrier, Tunis Air, plans to carry out some pretty aggressive spending cuts in order to tame its running costs. Auditors of the carrier's books, however, are also sounding the alarm over widespread corruption within the company. CGTN's Adin Drachi takes up the story.
The Court of Auditors in Tunisia has revealed in its 31st report for the year 2018 that since 2016 the national carrier Tunisia has had aircraft take off with more than 5 failures.
Tunisia Air has given flight clearance to planes with more than 5 failures. This is despite the fact that this kind of problems have caused aircraft accidents for other companies.
Judges also mentioned suspicions of corruption in the management of the stock of spare parts for Tunisia aircraft. During the period 2012-2017, spare parts were removed repeatedly 22 times without being placed in other aircraft, which may conceal overruns related to flight operations.
There are 658 cases of transfer of equipment for maintenance by specialists, but there has been no trace of a possible recovery of these parts by Tunisia Air Techniques.
These violations, which had a negative impact on the flight schedule, forced the company to bear additional aircraft rental charges.
The bill reached nearly $5.3 million during the 2014-2017 period. This is in addition to passenger compensation charges due to recorded delays in flight schedules. The company is suffering from major financial difficulties.
According to the audit report, Tunisia Techniques does not respect the deadlines for the completion of maintenance work on aircraft, which remain grounded, causing a disruption in flight scheduling.
The Court of Auditors report has sounded the alarm about mismanagement at the state-owned company. The Ministry of Transport said that despite the unexpected conclusions which will be investigated, Tunisia is still one of the safest airliners in the world. Adin Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, for those of you who've been to Rwanda's capital, Kigali, you will know that the reference to it as the land of 1,000 hills is quite literal. It's not metaphoric in any sense of the word. But it also has another benefit, since the country's got great soils for growing coffee. But due to poor infrastructure, Rwanda's coffee is little known outside its borders. But now, a Chinese e-commerce platform is helping to change that.
Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, is a perfect place for the production of coffee. However, coffee from the country is largely unknown to people outside its borders. But the situation is now taking a complete U-turn since the visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping in July last year. During the visit, several cooperation agreements between the two nations were signed. And in October 2018, Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba launched Africa's first ever electronic world trade platform in Kigali, the capital.
After 3 months after the President Xi visited Rwanda, the EWTP was launched, which really so fast, and then it's really incredible. And we already sell our coffee to China market, and you are repaid. So to say this is really fantastic, this cooperation is a cooperation that is really working.
The project is a platform that enables small and medium-sized enterprises to participate in cross-border electronic trade. It also aims to create a relationship between both nations' customers. Some of Rwanda's coffee brands that are being sold currently on Alibaba's Tmall international platform include Gorilla Coffee, West Hills Coffee, and the Land of 1,000 Hills.
EWTP is a solution for all the program of coffee sector. And then it increase up to 30%, and 30% the income that the growers used to have.
The future of Rwanda's economic development is digital and data-driven, and the introduction of e-commerce platforms like Alibaba in the country is expected to largely contribute to the economic growth of Rwanda. Noel Makugu, CGTN.
All right, then I'll leave it there for the time being. Because here's what's coming up at the top of the hour. We'll have an update on the arrest of those former bankers that used to work for Credit Suisse, as pointed out, over that fraud involved in Mozambique's $2 billion worth of previously hidden debt. Some details on that coming to you live from Washington at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Richard.
All right, thank you, Rama. You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way after the break. Stay tuned.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. People living with disabilities in Somalia have welcomed the creation of a national agency. The agency hopes to advocate for their full inclusion in society. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo reports from Mogadishu.
Somalia's president has signed into law a bill that sets the stage for the formation of a national disability agency. Authorities also say they plan to ratify the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities later in the year that will safeguard and promote the rights of persons living with disabilities.
I am truly happy that we have achieved huge success in campaigning for our rights. The law will assist persons with disabilities in many aspects, including political participation.
There is no clear statistics on the number of disabled persons in the country, but estimates from the United Nations suggest that it's higher than the global average estimates of 15% due to decades of conflict and lack of access to proper health care. Outbreaks of polio in the past and lack of immunization has affected thousands of Somali children, including Mohammed Farah, who became disabled when he was 3 years old. Now he's a disability campaigner. The 34-year-old has lobbied authorities and private sector to ensure public places are accessible to the disabled, a program he calls Open the Door Policy.
The initiative was launched with the name of telling the Somali people that the disabled people also have rights. Public areas targeted also include schools, mosques, hotels and hospitals.
Authorities say the agency will act as a link between the government and persons with disabilities.
The National Disability Agency, it's a step forward in the sense that they're going to have an agency that will advocate and will make sure that all the laws are implemented. The people with disability, they need to be included in the society in different aspects.
Constant attacks in major cities has left many people with permanent disability. Threats posed by landmines and other explosive devices in some rural areas has also contributed to a sharp increase in the number of persons living with disabilities in Somalia.
Post-conflict countries, you don't only have people who were born with disability, but they are also acquired disability based on the circumstances. They have been struggling for a long time, and they have been also very patient, and I think that's commendable. But now is the time for Somalia to take care of their citizens that have been waiting for a long time to get their rights.
Experts say the creation of the Disability Agency is a step in the right direction. one that proves Somalia is ready to support its physically challenged. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
With performances by contemporary African dance greats such as Jermaine Akogni, the 12th edition of the Dialogue de Corps Festival recently held in Burkina Faso showed why it's still one of the continent's leading contemporary dance events.
At 74, Jermaine Akogni is known as the mother of African contemporary dance, and she moves like someone half her age. Her style has its roots in African dance and drumming traditions, but it's blended with modern and urban techniques, something she believes helps to continue the rich heritage.
We were amongst the first ones who wanted to change traditional African dance and take it further. So I went a little further with what my ancestors had done and took African dance to another level. Dance is linked to what is happening and must reflect the times. Dance today continues to evolve. We also have to adapt and reflect the current environment.
Akogni's latest performance was at this year's Dialogue du Corps in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. It brings together dancers and choreographers from across the world every year, forming for hundreds of fans.
Dance, just like theatre and cinema, is something that frees you up. I came tonight to free myself and to let myself go and be transported into the universe of joy.
Et j'ai été pleinement satisfait, pleinement rempli de cela.
This year's festival explored a particularly relevant theme, migration, an issue tens of millions of Africans are dealing with, both inside the continent and out. As well as an African artistic platform, festivals like Dialogue du Corps give younger dancers an opportunity to learn from older, more experienced choreographers. And it's a chance for Akogni to help pass on and continue the long tradition. Edmond Nyabola, CGTN.
Up next is your sport news. Here's a sneak peek at what's ahead. The highs and lows of Egyptian squash in the year 2018.
Oh.